You've got to stop negotiating with yourself, seriously. Every single time you say, "I'll do it later," or "I'll start tomorrow," you are teaching your brain that it's okay to lose. You're teaching yourself that your word doesn't mean anything. You become someone who can't trust himself, and once you reach that point, nothing else matters, not your goals, not your dreams, not your plans, because when you don't trust yourself, you'll always find a reason to delay. You'll always find an excuse to stop. You have to understand this: success doesn't come from motivation. It comes from decisions, and those decisions are made when nobody's watching, when you don't feel like it, when everything inside you is screaming to quit. That's the moment that separates average people from the ones who actually build something great. The problem is that most people live in negotiation mode. They wake up, and instead of getting out of bed, they start negotiating with the alarm clock. 5 more minutes. You've already lost the first battle of the day. You told yourself you'd wake up early, and then you broke that promise. It seems small, right? But it's not, because every time you lose that tiny negotiation, you're lowering your standards just a little bit more. And over time, those small compromises add up until you look at your life and realize it's not where you wanted it to be. When you stop negotiating with yourself, you stop giving power to your emotions. You stop letting your feelings dictate your future, because here's the truth: your feelings are liars. They'll tell you you're tired when you've got plenty of energy left. They'll tell you it's too hard when you've barely tried. They'll convince you to take the easy path, the one that feels safe, comfortable, familiar, but that path leads nowhere. The people you admire are the ones who are disciplined, successful, confident they're not superhuman. They've just stopped negotiating. They've decided that their standards are non-negotiable. They go to the gym not because they feel motivated, but because it's simply who they are. They wake up early, they eat clean, they work on their goals not out of hype or excitement, but because that's their baseline. Their habits are built on identity, not emotion. You've got to get to that point, the point where the decision is made before the moment comes. You don't wait until the morning to decide whether you'll go to the gym. You decide the night before, and when the alarm rings, it's not a discussion, it's a command. You don't wait until you feel inspired to work on your business or your craft. You just do it because that's what someone with your standards does. Let me tell you something: the most dangerous sentence in the world is "I'll do it later." It sounds harmless, but it's poison. It's the slow death of your potential. Every later stacks up until you've wasted weeks, months, even years convincing yourself that you'll change one day. And that one day never comes because you're still negotiating. You're still looking for comfort instead of conviction. If you want to change your life, you need to start catching yourself in the act. The moment you start rationalizing, "I'll skip today," it's not a big deal. Stop right there. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? Someone who keeps promises, or someone who folds under pressure? Because every action, every small decision, is casting a vote for one of those two identities. You're either reinforcing discipline or reinforcing weakness. There's no middle ground. Discipline is built one small victory at a time. You don't build confidence by hyping yourself up. You build it by doing what you said you'd do, even when it sucks. You build it by earning your own respect. That's what nobody talks about. Self-respect is the foundation of confidence. When you tell yourself you'll do something and actually follow through, you start believing in yourself again. You stop doubting your abilities. You stop needing validation because you know you can rely on you, and that's when life starts to shift. When you stop negotiating, your actions become automatic. There's no internal war, no overthinking, no mental tug-of-war. You just execute. That's where real freedom lies, in doing the hard things until they become effortless. But to reach that level, you need to be brutally honest with yourself. You need to admit where you've been slacking, where you've been giving yourself too many passes. Stop pretending you're doing your best when you know you're not. Stop pretending you're waiting for the right time. The right time doesn't exist, there's only now. You either act or you don't. You either move or you stay stuck. And I get it, it's uncomfortable. Growth always is. You're going to have to push through resistance, through fatigue, through the voice in your head telling you to quit. But that's the price of becoming someone extraordinary. The price of keeping your word. So the next time your mind tries to negotiate when it says, "Take it easy," or "You deserve a break," you tell it, "No, we don't negotiate with weakness." You remind yourself that comfort is temporary, but regret lasts forever. You remind yourself that the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. Because every moment you give in, you teach your brain to settle. But every time you stand firm, Every time you follow through despite the resistance, you're building a version of yourself that doesn't fold. A version that wins no matter what. Stop negotiating with yourself. Start acting like the person you said you'd become. That's where transformation begins, not in motivation, not in hype, but in quiet, consistent execution. When you stop giving yourself options, you start giving yourself power. And that's when everything in your life starts to change. Most people think identity is something you're born with, but that's not true. Identity is something you build brick by brick, choice by choice. Every action you take is either reinforcing the person you say you are or proving that you're lying to yourself. You say you want success, but do your standards match that? Because your standards are what shape your identity, not your words, not your dreams, not your goals. Standards, you see, your standards are the invisible boundaries that define who you are. They're the rules you live by when nobody's watching. The things you refuse to compromise on. Most people don't have standards, they have preferences. They say, I prefer to wake up early, or I prefer to work hard, but the moment life gets uncomfortable, they fold. Preferences disappear under pressure. Standards don't. Standards stay. When you have real standards, they become part of your identity. You stop needing to motivate yourself, because it's just who you are now. You don't need to remind yourself to train, to work, to eat clean, to push harder because your brain recognizes it as your baseline. You're not doing it to achieve something, you're doing it because it's who you are. That's when you stop chasing results and start embodying them. Think about it. You can't just say, I'm a disciplined person. That's not identity, that's a wish. Discipline becomes part of your identity only when it's proven through repetition. When you show up every day, even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient, that's when your brain starts to believe it. You can't fake identity, you have to earn it. This is where most people fail. They try to build new habits without changing their identity. They say, I want to go to the gym, but deep down they still identify as someone who's lazy, inconsistent, or undisciplined, and that's why they quit after a week, because your actions will always align with your identity. You will never rise above the standards you set for yourself. If you see yourself as someone who always finds excuses, that's what you'll keep doing. But if you start seeing yourself as someone who doesn't tolerate weakness, who executes regardless of emotion, suddenly your behavior starts shifting. You start holding yourself accountable. You start taking pride in being someone who follows through. That's the power of standards. They rewrite who you are, and once your identity changes, everything else becomes easier. You don't have to rely on willpower anymore. You don't have to fight with yourself to make the right decision. It becomes automatic, like brushing your teeth. You don't need motivation for that because it's part of your identity. The goal is to make discipline and excellence feel just as natural. Let's be honest, your life right now is a reflection of your standards. If you're surrounded by drama, if you're broke, if you're unfit, if you're constantly stressed, it's because your standards allow it. Somewhere along the way, you decided that it was okay to accept mediocrity. You stop demanding more from yourself. You normalize things that don't serve you. The solution isn't to complain or look for hacks. The solution is to raise your standards. You stop tolerating laziness. You stop tolerating excuses. You stop tolerating toxic habits, fake friends, and wasted time. You draw a line and say, this is not who I am anymore. That's the day your life starts to shift, because once you raise your standards, your entire environment has to rise to meet them. And yes, it's uncomfortable at first. It's supposed to be. Growth always demands discomfort. You'll lose people who can't match your energy. You'll outgrow situations that no longer fit your standards. You'll feel lonely for a while, but that's the cost of transformation. You can't build a new identity while clinging to the old one. The real test is when nobody's watching. That's where standards live. Anyone can look disciplined when the camera's on, when it's convenient, when people are cheering. But who are you at 5 a.m. when your alarm goes off? Who are you on Friday night when temptation shows up? That's your identity. That's what defines your character. You need to start speaking the language of identity. Stop saying, I'm trying to wake up early. Say, I'm the kind of person who wakes up early. Stop saying, I'm trying to be consistent. Say, I'm the kind of person who doesn't miss. Because your words matter, they reinforce what your mind believes. Every sentence is programming your subconscious. Speak in alignment with the person you're becoming, not the one you're leaving behind. Understand this: high standards are not about being perfect. They're about refusing to settle for less than you're capable of. You'll still make mistakes, you'll still have bad days, but your standards will pull you back on track. They'll remind you who you are. Standards act like a compass. They don't stop you from drifting, but they always bring you back to your true north. When you live by standards, you stop chasing motivation because the game changes. You're not focused on feeling good, you're focused on being great. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop caring about comparison. You become grounded, stable, unshakable. Because your identity isn't tied to outcomes anymore, it's tied to execution. This is what separates leaders from followers. Leaders set standards, followers chase feelings. Leaders build identity through discipline. Followers wait for the perfect moment. Leaders decide who they are, and then they act accordingly every single day, without apology, without negotiation. That's how you build real power, not by watching another motivational video, not by writing down affirmations you don't believe, but by living your standards so consistently that the old version of you can't survive anymore. You want to change your life? Don't start with goals, start with identity. Ask yourself, who would I be if I stopped accepting less, and then start living like that person today, not tomorrow. Because the truth is, you don't need motivation. You just need to become the kind of person who doesn't rely on it. Raise your standards until your old life no longer fits. Because the day you do, your identity will evolve, and your reality will have no choice but to follow. People think discipline is a prison. They think it means restriction, boredom, rules, and limits. They see disciplined people and assume they're missing out on life, that they're too strict, too rigid, too controlled. But that's the biggest lie society has sold you. Discipline isn't a cage. Discipline is freedom. It's the key that unlocks every door you've been staring at from the outside. It's the only way to truly own your time, your mind, your emotions, your life. When you live without discipline, you might think you're free. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want. You can sleep in, skip workouts, scroll for hours, eat whatever, spend aimlessly. But that's not freedom. That's slavery to impulses, emotions, and instant gratification. You're not making choices, you're being controlled by the lowest version of yourself, and every time you give in, every time you chase comfort, you're tightening your own chains. Freedom isn't doing what feels good in the moment. Freedom is waking up and knowing that your mind listens to you. Freedom is looking in the mirror and knowing that you're in control, that no temptation, no distraction, no emotion can move you off your path. That's real power, that's real peace. People chase balance because they're too weak for structure. They don't want freedom, they want comfort, but comfort has never built greatness. Every person you admire, every athlete, every creator, every entrepreneur, they built their life on discipline. They sacrificed what was easy for what was necessary. They built habits so strong that laziness doesn't stand a chance. Discipline gives you control over the only thing that truly matters, yourself. You can't control the economy, you can't control other people, you can't control the past or the future, but you can control what you do right now, and that's where all your power is. That's where success is built, not in the big moments, but in the small, consistent acts of discipline that nobody sees. The reason most people are anxious and lost is because they've handed over their control. They let their emotions drive the car. They wake up and immediately check their phone, letting notifications and opinions dictate their mood. They eat junk because it's convenient. They delay work because they don't feel like it. They live as slaves to comfort, and then they wonder why they feel so empty. But when you live with discipline, everything changes. You start to respect yourself. You start to trust your word again. You build momentum. You no longer wake up with guilt because you know you're doing the things that need to be done. Your life starts to move in one direction forward. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. You stop drifting and start driving. Here's the truth: discipline is the foundation of freedom because it removes decision fatigue. Most people waste their days deciding, should I work out today? Should I start that task now or later? Should I eat this or that? Every decision drains mental energy, but when you're disciplined, you don't decide, you execute. You've already made the decision once, and now it's just who you are. You remove the noise. You create peace through consistency. That's why disciplined people seem so calm. They're not fighting themselves all day. They've built systems that protect their focus. Their routines are their armor. They don't need to feel like it, because they've already decided the type of person they are. There's no debate, no drama, just execution. Discipline is freedom because it gives you time. When you procrastinate, you lose control of your time, and when you lose control of your time, you lose control of your life. Every minute you waste now compounds into regret later. But when you're disciplined, you win back hours, days, years. You create time through structure. You become efficient, intentional, unstoppable. Discipline also gives you confidence, not the fake kind you post online, the real kind that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. That's what people don't understand. Confidence isn't built from compliments or success. It's built from consistency. It's built from doing the hard thing over and over until it's natural. When you keep showing up for yourself, your brain starts to believe, I can handle anything. That's real confidence, that's real freedom. When you lack discipline, life feels chaotic. You're constantly behind, constantly guilty, constantly chasing motivation. You live in reaction mode, reacting to deadlines, emotions, and failures. You're not living, you're surviving, but discipline flips the script. It brings order to the chaos. It turns anxiety into clarity. It gives you direction, stability, and peace. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start being a creator of your life. And the best part, discipline compounds. The more disciplined you are in one area, the easier it becomes to expand it to others. You start with one habit, waking up early, working out, journaling, meditating, and soon it bleeds into your diet, your business, your mindset, your relationships. Everything starts leveling up because the root of growth is discipline. Look, the people who live the most free lives, the ones who travel, who build wealth, who create impact, they're not lucky, they're disciplined. They built systems that gave them freedom, they earned it through structure. That's the irony, the more disciplined your life becomes, the freer you are to do what you love. You buy freedom with structure. So when you hear someone say, I don't want to be too strict, I just want to enjoy life, understand this discipline doesn't take joy away, it amplifies it. Because when you've earned your rest, when you've pushed through resistance, when you've followed through on your promises, that's when joy actually means something. That's when freedom feels real. Without discipline, life owns you. With discipline, you own life. That's the truth nobody wants to hear because it requires accountability. It requires sacrifice. It requires you to let go of excuses and comfort and become the kind of person who acts no matter how they feel. But once you do, everything changes. Discipline is not punishment. It's the highest form of self-respect. It's saying, I deserve a life that's aligned with my potential, not my excuses. It's the quiet voice that says, keep going, when everything in you wants to stop. It's the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. So no, discipline isn't restriction. It's liberation. Because when you master discipline, you master yourself, and when you master yourself, there's nothing left in this world that can control you. That's what freedom really means.